Let's have a look at the story from tonight, because once again, when it's come to their calculations, this government has been left wanting when it comes to interest deductibility for landlords.
Checklist tidied away, now on with the rest of the government's agenda, including restoring deductibility for mortgage interest on residential investment properties. The commitment agreed to in coalition negotiations was to phase in the policy and backdate it for the current financial year. That promise was broken. It will now be phased in from the next financial year.
It's just a reality of where we sit with the fiscal situation here in New Zealand at the moment.
See if you can pick out what the PR spun was from the ninth floor, because Jenna does well and points out how he uses this phrase about 6 times.
Translation, too expensive. Not that Luxon could say so.
Well, it's acknowledgement of the fiscal situation that we've inherited. Again, just acknowledgement of the fiscal situation we've inherited. We appraise the economic environment as it is and will continue to do so. And where we're delivering our policy, we might make adjustments along the way. That's okay.
So what that basically is blame Labor. That's why I was saying blame, because it's what we've inherited. Nothing to do. Remember, we had this conversation before. We had it with Craig Rennie, I think, when he came on. It's not about what they've been left with. It's about paying for what they've projected. But National's trying to say it's all because of what's been before. But actually, the numbers are so bad, and they got to change things based on what they've promised. So it's actually forward-looking for what they want to do and what they've promised to do and what they're going to pay their funders back for, as opposed to what's been left. That's a very important point to remember. So here's some of these numbers.
Official costings released to Newshub show the policy will cost $360 million in the first year, growing to $915 million a year by the 2027-28 fiscal year. National only budgeted it costing $650 million a year by then. That's more than $250 million difference. The same National that claimed all its numbers were solid as a rock.
Rock solid, rock solid, rock solid, rock solid.
Do you still stand by the comment that your numbers were rock solid on the campaign?
Yeah, at that time, absolutely.
How did you get your numbers so wrong on the interest deductibility then?
Oh, we didn't. We didn't.
The policy will cost a total of $2.9 billion over 4 years. That's $800 million more than National calculated, partly due to costing differences, partly because it comes in faster, closer to ACT's campaign promise. ACT only budgeted $2.7 billion for it.
It doesn't cost. The government doesn't have money. It takes money.
This is weasel words. It doesn't cost because the government's not paying for it. It's less money coming in. But that means other things can't be done. So the cost of other things are impaired. But this is weasel. I should be careful. Maybe that's why they won't come on. This is weasel words, trying to say that this is not a cost to the government.
Off New Zealanders. So when you say it costs, what you're really meaning is that the government is going to take less money and take less money out of residential rental housing. So there's actually going to be a better market for renters.
The Council of Trade Unions argues the money could be better directed to those struggling.
$3 billion, which is $1 billion more than National had promised in its overall tax plans. What it does is it reduces the scope for other expenditure. So that could be less expenditure on health and education and else on other bits of public investment.
If you are thinking about the renters of New Zealand, which is where I'd hope you might.
This is the other bullshit, yeah, and I've jotted this down in my notes for another time.
I'm ready for this.
This is a fairy tale, right? I just, like, all I want to ask Mr. Luxon is first of all, Mr. Luxon, show me how much you've reduced the rents from on your rental properties, right? That's the first thing, if it's downward pressure. But the second thing is, show me evidence anytime, anywhere that rents have gone down when landlords have got a perk, right? Because they don't. In fact, this is the party that was saying the reason that GST off fruit and veggies wouldn't work is that the supermarkets would not drop their value, they'd just make more profit. So why do they say it's going to happen to supermarkets, but all of a sudden landlords are going to be all altruistic and they're going to pass it on? Of course they're not. So a landlord can either make $100 a week or $180 a week. Oh, no, we'll just keep it at 100 and knock your rent back by $80. Of course they're not going to do it. It's fairy tale stuff, Chewy.
People in the chat that have rented or are currently renting, when ever have you received a rent reduction? Don't worry, I'll wait. I've rented most of my adult life and have never received a reduction in rent.
Yeah.
But I've been thankful that a landlord has kept the rent the same year on year.
Yep.
But I have never received a reduction of rent. And this is why this is fucking fantasy. That because they've got interest deductibility, they're suddenly going to wind back the rent. It's absolute bullshit, fantasy. They could open it up to every renter in the country. There's not going to be a single person that comes back and goes, oh yeah, my landlord did.
Yeah.
Absolute rubbish.
Unless the politicians do, because they're smart, because everyone knows that's going to be the first question in the next election cycle. How much did you reduce your rent by? So he should probably do that. And if he's got people watching this, they should probably tell him to do that. And I might have just given him an out, because obviously if it wasn't said to them, of course he's not going to reduce the rent of his, because then it becomes a better investment. Anyway, we should let him, actually, now we should ignore everything we've just said, remove our brains and listen to how Luxon explains it.
Be thinking, you would be very, they will be very grateful for the fact that we are doing everything we can to increase the supply of rental properties across New Zealand.
Hoping the landlord tax break trickles down.
What?
Jenna's with us now. Kia ora, Jenna, the government's first.
Hoping that the landlord rebate trickles down. Of course it's not going to trickle down. Like I just said, I actually think what I've just said is a really fair analogy. This is the party, National, who said that supermarkets wouldn't reduce their prices of fruit and veggie if GST came off. So if supermarkets weren't going to do it, why the fuck should landlords do it if they now make more money? So you're saying supermarkets then have a bigger profit, they make more money on that fruit and veggies, they won't reduce it. So of course, if you think that about fruit and veggies, you must think that about landlords as well, unless you're hypocritical and you're just doing it to score political points. Chewy, yours, sir.
It is just fucking crazy. He is drawing a direct line between we're going to do this nice thing for landlords, and that is going to mean that there's more rental properties. Do you know what makes more rental properties? Building more fucking houses. And maybe we should just aim a little bit higher and go, maybe we should get people into their first homes. Maybe if we should, because the other, like, they love talking about fiscal cliffs, right? The big fiscal cliff that this country is looking at is a huge cohort of people that are going to be reaching retirement without owning a home, without owning a major asset. And we're not like countries like Germany, where there is a habit of very long rental terms and you can literally rent at a fair rate for the majority of your life.
But that's because there's legislation in places like Germany and France protecting the renters. You're not expected necessarily in those countries to own your own home. It is an expectation that you will rent for life. So the government focuses on how to enable renters to do that. This government is focusing on how to enable more landlords to have more properties. That's the difference.
Our system has been, well, in my lifetime anyway, has been built around you work, you buy your property, you have a major asset to take you into your retirement, that you're not going to be paying rent. And when so many of these right-wing parties are starting to say, hey, look, maybe we're going to put the retirement age up, maybe superannuation is not affordable anymore, I would be fucking worried. I would be really, really worried. And there is this thing of moving people away and these platitudes to renters. Piss off. Does Luxon know what that's like? Does Erica Stanford's last comments about what it's like to be rented? Like, remember the debacle about talking about getting your bond back from someone that's never, ever had to do that before? This government does not care about renters. Oh, no, that's not fair. Maybe it does, because that's how the landlords get their money. So
that's how a lot of them get extra money.
You're a unit to be farmed. They can't squeeze too hard.
Yeah.
But they've got to keep squeezing.